I've really enjoyed doing this mini-series on the music of Paul McCartney because Paul McCartney is one of my favorite, if not my favorite musician of all time. This guy is just incredible at the amount of music that he turns out. We've done a number of episodes looking at Paul's music, the albums he put out in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the first 5 years of 2000. This guy just doesn't stop and he continues on. But before we get started, I'd like to issue a personal plea to all of you watching this episode. If you've enjoyed this mini-series, I hope you can help me out. Because one of you have suggested, wouldn't it be wonderful if I actually did an interview with Paul McCartney at the last episode where we sum up everything that he's done? And I thought, sure, why not? But that'd be great, but I don't know how to actually reach Paul McCartney. So today I went onto his website, paulmccartney.com, which I'll talk about later. It is a great website. And I posted something on the message board there, asking people to see if we can't figure out some way that Paul could do like a Zoom interview for maybe 5-10 minutes right at the end of this mini-series. So my plea to you is, if you know anybody who can connect to Paul McCartney, or if you know Paul McCartney, could you please reach out and see if he'd be willing to do that? What a great way to end this mini-series on Paul McCartney's music over the decades. By the way, Bernie Drops the Needle has over 200 episodes, and I just went back and looked, and the music of Paul McCartney is featured on over 30 of those episodes. So if you can help me out to reach Paul McCartney, that would be great. And who knows, maybe we'll all be amazed and he'll agree to do it. That would be something. Now let's move forward and see what Paul is up to in the years from 2006 to 2009. Are you ready? Then let's drop the needle. Paul starts 2006 by releasing another classical album, and this one is called Esse Cor Meum. And excuse me, I don't actually speak Latin, but it translates into Behold My Heart. The album had a U.S. premiere at a sold-out concert in Carnegie Hall in New York. The piece is scored for a choir and orchestra, and it includes an interlude, which functions as kind of a eulogy to Linda McCartney. Now, during the time that he recorded this album, Paul was separating from his wife at that time, Heather. From doing a classical album, the next album that Paul's music is involved with is a mashup album. It's called Love, and it is for Cirque du Soleil. George was a friend of Guy Liberté, the founder of Cirque du Soleil, and George wanted to figure out a way to use Beatle music in a Cirque production. The album contains pieces from 130 individual Beatles songs and demos. As a mashup project, it presents Beatles music in a new and engaging format. This album was a hit. It reached number 3 in the UK and 4 in the US. And the Cirque performance opened at a specially built theater in the Mirage Casino and Hotel in Las Vegas. I went to see it when I was in Las Vegas for work, and I was so amazed that then I went back to see it with my wife. And then I gave my daughter and her husband tickets to see it as well. It was a great show. And now that the Mirage is closing, Love has ended as well. Listen to the album. It is amazing. If nothing else, just for the vocals on Because. It just gives you goosebumps every time you hear it. Amazing harmony. Paul then signs with Starbucks, the coffee chain, to release his next album, which is called Memory Almost Full. And he actually started recording it while he was still doing Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. But this was a difficult time for Paul, as he was in the middle of a divorce from his wife, Heather. And some of the songs on this album reflect that period. It was Paul's first album to be released as a digital download and a CD. Tracks include the great Dance Tonight, which I really like, Ever Present Past, Only Mama Knows, and 2 songs that people think are about the divorce, Mr. Bellamy and Gratitude. Then there's the medley that starts with Vintage Clothes, about looking back. That Was Me, about Paul's old school days. Feet in the Clouds, about him growing up. House of Wax, about him being a celebrity. And The End of the End, where Paul sings about his future dying. In 2008, Paul decides it's time to return to the Firemen, so he and Youth get together again and record a new album, but this one credits both of them, and it contains vocals. The album is called Electric Arguments, and each song was recorded in a day. One song that really stands out, and I really like it, is Sing the Changes. Paul said when they started working on it, he had no idea what the lyrics or melody would be. It just grew organically. And as far as I know, this is the only Firemen song that Paul performs live. And I got to see him do it, and it was great. More than 45 years after appearing on The Ed Sullivan Show with the Beatles, Paul returns to the same theater to perform on The Late Show with David Letterman. Then in 2009, an interesting side project happened, and it was called the Beatles Rock Band, where they took Beatles music and did some animation and created a video game. And the controllers were unique, and I bought all of them. One was a guitar that looked like Lennon's Rickenbacker, one was a guitar that looked like George's, and one was a guitar that looked like McCartney's Hofner bass. And then there was a little fake drum kit for Ringo, and each of those were a controller. So I bought all 4 of them so that the family could become the Beatles. And I remember playing that with my wife and our 2 kids, and I'm not a gamer, and I was horrible at it. And my son, who is a gamer, gave me no end of grief about how, Dad, I thought you could play these Beatles songs. And I said to him, you know, I was playing and singing these songs before you were born, and I actually got paid for doing it. But like I said, I ain't a gamer, but it's a great game. In the summer of 2009, and in fact to close out this decade, Paul plays 3 sold-out concerts in New York at the brand new Citi Field, which was built to replace Shea Stadium, where of course the Beatles so famously played years earlier. And those concerts yielded a double live album called Good Evening, New York City. Lots of great hits, lots of great versions of the song on this album. Now, as usual, I've created a Spotify playlist where you can listen to some of the songs that I've talked about in this episode. And here's the link, and I'll also put it in the comments below. In the decade that started with the year 2000, Paul has released 14 albums. So now let's tally that up. The albums he recorded in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and now the 2000. Paul shows no sign of slowing down. God love him, and you know there's going to be a lot more great music. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Paul, and keep a rockin'.
If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.